Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. Today, we are doing our second part of our Portus Lunch and Learn series. Today is going to be optimize operations with efficient cost management. If you guys have any questions throughout the event, please throw them down into the question box and we'll be happy to answer any of them. If you think of any questions afterwards, here is our contact information. You can contact any single one of us here at PeopleSense. You can contact Jim Castellano, myself, Jessica Canellis, or your made to manage person, James Cooey. So we are going to go ahead and kick it over to Bill from Portus so we can get started on today's event.
All right, thank you, Jessica. I'm just waiting for this prompt. Perfect. And I'm assuming you can see this Lunch and Learn slide?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our second in a series of 4 Lunch and Learns this March. This may be a replay for some of you if you attended last week, but just in case there's going to be some new people here today, very quickly, our company Portus is a 16-year-old almost company. And what is a key part of our secret sauce is that we all come from manufacturing backgrounds. So we like to say that we've walked in your shoes. We've added to that an extensive amount of knowledge on Made to Manage. We've been building reporting and analytics on top of Made to Manage since 2012. And if boiled down to one sentence, what we do is we provide a curated real-time analytics engine with continuous drill downs into more levels of detail, delivered in an easy-to-use browser-based application. That's a mouthful, but if you just take the key points out of this, probably the most important one is curated. Curated means people with expertise in manufacturing and expertise in Made to Manage, and having now collaborated with people exactly like you, companies exactly like you that use Made to Manage, have perfected various analytics and present them on a real-time basis, linking real-time with Made to Manage, and give you a mechanism to slowly peel the onion to really understand the dynamics of your business, with today's emphasis being on costing. We have 2 audiences today. Existing Portus customers are invited and they can attend just to brush up on various things and maybe learn, have an aha moment like, wow, I didn't know you could do that with Portus. And then for prospective customers, you can skip the sales and marketing, see it in action, so that you can really determine whether you want a more personalized interactive demo. This is a lunch and learn, and we will send a $25 Starbucks card to everybody that attends the session all the way through. We did have a snafu with Starbucks last week. The digital cards for last week's attendees are going out as we speak. One more slide before we jump into the demo. This is an overview of our sales process. We reach out to people, invite them to webinar. Sometimes they skip the webinar and go straight into a personalized interactive demo. If they get interested, we give you a free 30-day trial, because until you see all of this functionality with your own data, you really won't know if it's going to really fit in your environment. And we are very confident in the power of our solution. So we have always, since the beginning, sold it on a monthly subscription basis. There is no long-term commitment. So really, after the 30-day free trial, we're in a series of paid trials, if you will, on an ongoing basis. So our goal today is to answer one question from your perspective. Do you see enough to request a 1-hour demo where we can move the discussions forward? Okay, with that, let's jump into Portus. And I'm going to first go into a demo database that we have that is for a business that is very materials intensive in terms of their costs. And then we're going to move on to more traditional kind of job oriented, labor overhead intensive applications as well. Once you log into Portus, it's organized in a series of tabs. Clicking on a tab opens various reporting options on the left-hand toolbar. We will start with a bill of materials analysis because we're going to pretend we're an engineer and an analyst assigned with optimizing costs on a particular bill of material. So we have to answer a question. What is the assembly or the parent level part number that you want to do this analysis for? Maybe we don't even know the assembly, so we'll say, I want to search by description for any part numbers that have bombs, that have G3 somewhere in their description, and I quickly get a list of 40 items that meet that criteria. We see G3 in all of these descriptions, and we find our target. We want the G3 scan module, Rev F, which is the current rev that we have in the system. I'm going to ask for a flattened bill of material for that G3 scan module. So now Portus went through and gave me a flattened bill of material. Let me get the menus out of the way so that we can just focus on the report itself. We have parents and children. Some of the parts report directly to the 88001, which is the G3 scan module. Some of them report to subassembly level parts. This has been flattened for us. And now we're seeing the over $9,000 worth of cost by purchased part number. Let's say that we are interested strictly in capacitors or part numbers that have caps somewhere in them. So now I put a filter on description. I see all these that say cap. And then I will also do other Portus manipulations to look at it in a descending order by standard cost. And I see, oh, out of the $6.13 that I spent on caps, number one item goes 12 per at 26 cents a piece, contributing over $3 worth of cost. I want to know more about this part. The part is blue and underlined. I click on it and I go to what is by far the most used report in Portus, part inquiry, on one mashup presentation, everything I ever wanted to know about a particular part number. I see standard cost information, last actual. Here we're focused on cost, but there is this report is very helpful in shortage management or in looking at inventory analysis, excess, almost all reports in Portus that have a part number on them, the part number will be blue and underlined and we'll get to this screen. So then we say, okay, I'm analyzing cost. Let me see. I want to look at PO history on this cost. And I see that the cost has recently come down to the 21-cent mark. So that's good. I know what's going on with that. And then I can quickly go back to my original analysis and analyze other parts. This is very quick, mostly to get you acclimated with navigation in Portus. It's not the most complex costing question that this answered, but for some people it could be very useful. Also, one more thing I want to do in all of these lunch and learns, besides showing you how to filter and sort and click on stuff that is blue and underlined, to remind you that various reports in Portus are going to have this Excel icon, and if I click on it, it'll export this to Excel, and I can open it, and I'm going to get exactly what I saw on that screen in terms of the cost information. And this is a full Excel spreadsheet with column and row integrity, and I can do whatever I want with that. So now I'm going to go back to our report. I'm going to sign out and move on to the next part of our demo. Here now I'm going to go to much more of a traditional labor and overhead routing heavy database. And I'm going to first look at sales order costing. We've completed a complex sales order that's linked to a parent job with all kinds of sub jobs, and we want to know, hey, how did we do on this sales order? So I'm going to go ahead and invoke sales order costing, and I already have picked a sales order that I have some good stuff going on with it. And I'm going to say, I'm interested in our sales order 176891. I'll hit go. It says I only found one. That's what we expected. So now we'll go to the sales order costing report to the 176891. The first report that we see, or the main report, has three sections. There's our sales order. It's a closed sales order. It was for our customer Gamma Stream Systems. And we see that it was something that was linked to job number 35280. Off to the right here, we see an analysis of the margin. So this was a sales order for a little bit over 290K. And we had an official quote that then generated an SO estimate that then we created jobs for, that created job estimates, and then finally we tracked the actual job cost. So we started out thinking we would be in the 33% range in terms of margin. In actuality, we ended up at 29%. And if I look, we've got some interesting things going on. The actual materials ended up coming in pretty close. The labor was actually lower, but the overhead was significantly higher. So we must have recalibrated on overhead rates sometime in the middle of all of this happening. Once we kind of look at this and get acclimated, down below, we get a full breakdown of the estimate and the actual cost. So this one parent job had all kinds of sub-jobs associated with it. 139 sub-jobs. So this is quite a complex example. All of them, we show the labor hours, actual to estimate, the material cost, actual to estimate. There is the bottom line numbers, 24,751 and 22,859. You see, that's what it rolled up to. And then we show the labor, the overhead, and the subcon costs, and we can start looking at this and say, okay, I'm going to look for places where we actually ended up spending more time than we anticipated. And what piques my interest is this particular sub-job, 0002, where we spent 167 hours compared to 140 hours. So that caused an overage in labor and an overage in overhead. So I want to know more about this. So I'm going to click on that 167, and I get a two-pronged analysis, first showing me what came in terms of labor and overhead from components that were completed to this job. And then I get the router where I see that the first 1, 2, 3, 4 operations were all done in the work center R welding. And I see how I did on those in terms of actuals and estimates. So I can kind of scan all of this and see, looks like an operation 80 in our assembly, that's where I really exceeded the actual hour, the estimated hours, 29 versus 12. And then down here, I had actually all of the logs of time that were linked to this job. So if I'm interested in operation 80 in our assembly, I can say, well, limit this to our assembly only. And I'm going to now see the 29 hours and who logged in and what were their times, and maybe go do some analysis and see why it is that we exceeded the hours so significantly in that particular operation. I can X out now, get back to where I was. When I look at the materials, I exceeded material. And as I kind of scan this, one of the jobs that piques my interest is this job, the 0005 job, where material costs were significantly more than the estimated cost. I want to know more about that. So I'm going to click on the material cost. This takes me to its own drill. It says, this is a simple situation. You only had one part that needed to be issued. The estimated quantity needed was 52, and you actually issued 52. So it wasn't that the quantity was the issue. It's just that what we thought it was going to cost us and what it actually cost us were quite different. And that's why we had this difference in cost. Remember that I told you the part number is blue and underlined in all of these reports, because now I can say, oh, I want to know more about this part. I'll click on this part, take a look, and see the standard cost is now even higher at $16.69. I click on PO history and I see, oh yeah, this thing has continuously increased in price in terms of the PO unit price. And maybe that drives some action for me in terms of managing my estimates and figuring out how to quote this to the customer the next time if we're going to do something. Then maybe I noticed that my subcontract costs were significantly higher than I anticipated. So rather than going and hunting and pecking for this, I'm just going to say sort this in descending order by subcontract costs, and I see, oh, right at the top, this one job, the 0038 job, I really exceeded this up. I thought I was going to spend 200 and I spent 1,568. So I want to know more about that. I'm going to see that that was on a PO with this vendor and on that part for the subcontract, and that was all of it. So we thought that Brighton sandblasting was going to cost us, was going to charge us $200, but they charged us $1,568. That's something else that I may need to investigate. So as I kind of went through this very quickly, the main point I'm hoping to instill in the audience is that we're able to start at a very high level, looking at overall margins, and really just using our mouse and standard manipulations, we're able to dive into the details of materials, of labor, of individual logs, labor logs, and individual POs in terms of subcontract to really analyze the costs in a very surgical way, and always able to peel the onion and go further even to the part number level. That is a fundamental part of the Portus solution. Curated things that have been put together, analytics that have been put together by experts, and then refined and perfected because they've been banged on by customers with questions and improvements, and then they all get delivered to new customers as a fully vetted, curated solution. So that was sales order costing. We focused on one sales order. Let's say now that you want to do an analysis overall in terms of how things are going in terms of estimates and actuals, and superimpose those in terms of what's going on with revenue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I want to look at the revenue from 3/1/2025 to February 28th. That's one full year. And I want to just take a look and see how I'm doing on various vectors, customers, part numbers, and so forth, in terms of gross margin. So what we show here is the actual invoiced amount right now to each customer. And then we show you the quote cost, although it could be that some of this work was done without a quote. It'll definitely have a sales order estimate, and then you'll finally have the actual cost from the work orders, or if it's some kind of a stock, something that's provided from stock, from actual stock costs. And we see two key measures. What is my actual gross margin? So that takes my actual cost divided by my invoice amount. And then we take a look at our efficiency rate, which takes a look at our actual costs, actually our estimated costs on the sales order divided by the actual cost. So if this is over 100%, that's a good thing for us. And then we look at our gross margins. So as I look at this, I may say, well, you know what? I'm interested in seeing this by product class. So I can look at that same analysis by product class and measure my efficiency and gross margin percentages. I may look at it by an estimator, because ultimately all this stuff is done and the margins are preset from an estimate perspective that results in the quotes. And maybe I say, you know, I want to measure a particular estimator on how they're doing in terms of quoting. So I'm going to set this to customer. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, I am looking for my estimator, Charles Hammonds. I picked this all because it has some good complexity. So Charles Hammonds ended up doing all kinds of estimatings for all kinds of sales orders for multiple different customers. And in some cases, efficiency percentage, he really overestimated in terms of what we actually ended up costing us on those particular pieces of business. And in some cases, he was significantly underestimating. So maybe I say, okay, that's interesting. Let me look at the ones where he underestimated. On Aries systems, he underestimated, and I want to know more about that. So I'll click on this, and I'm going to go to a pretty detailed report that's going to show me all of the invoices that made up this amount. So I see invoices and I see part numbers and product classes and all of that. And then I see the actual efficiency percentages because I have the SO estimate for that particular invoice and the actual for that invoice. And I'm able to look and see the details of that and see what happened on these. So here, for example, in both cases, actually, the actual cost ended up being significantly more than the SO estimated cost, leading to the efficiency percentages that you see here. And I can analyze that further. I can look at now this one where it went the other way for PyGuard security. And in the case of PyGuard security, I think I'm going to get a lot more records over the last year, and I can analyze these and say, wow, in some cases, the efficiency percentages were very low. In some cases, they were very high. On average, they were at 124.32%, and I can analyze that further to see if the estimator needs to make various adjustments as they're looking at this. You can just also just use this just to look at overall margins and overall efficiencies by customers, not necessarily focused on a particular estimator as an example. So if I'm looking at it by customer, I may say, well, show this to me for my product class fab components. So for fab components, I see my customers and I see the measures, and I can dive in and look at the details of a particular customer and a particular product class, always looking at all of the gory details with further drills, as you can see, to peel the onion on what's going on from an efficiency and margin percentage. Okay, so this is more related to costs of things that have completed and are historical. What if you're interested in terms of costs or looking at work that is currently in the factory? So there we have a report that also is clicked on all the time by all of our customers called Job Log. Job Log is really, some people would just call it the WIP report. I'm not going to, in the interest of time, explain all of these options. I'm just going to hit go here. This is going to take a little bit longer because it's accumulating all kinds of data about the release jobs in the factory, from routing to cost to component shortages, so it can present to you a very complete picture of your work in process in total and at the job level on various different parameters. And once it comes back, we're going to focus on the cost parameter. Here we go. So we have 2,470 jobs currently in release status in the factory floor. We have job numbers. If they're, and this is a database where very much dominated by make jobs. So there's connectivity to sales orders. Then we see how many operations are on the job, what is the current operation that we're in, and what work center that is. And what I'm going to do for our analysis, I'm going to say, well, I'd like to know everything that is sitting in our welding, there it is, our welding work center. So there's 149 jobs sitting there. And I can see also, by the way, how many days they've been sitting at that particular op. So these are release jobs. For example, these first three where no operations have been completed, but they must have been released 182 days ago, 114 days ago, and 21 days ago. So that in and of itself is something I may want to look into. But let's focus on this fourth job. 13 operations, 11 have been completed. It's sitting at our welding now, and it's been at that operation for 5 days. Now, there's a lot of information about these jobs. If I keep scrolling, I'm going to notice that I'm going to see that my costs, even though I'm not done with the job, are significantly over the estimate. So I'm going to want to know more about this job. So I will click on the job number, and this is going to take me into the job inquiry report, another popular report. This report has 4 sections. It has top level information about the job. Then I get a job hierarchy report, which is all of the jobs that report to this job. Then I get my WIP status, which is my routing status for the job. And this is where people spend a lot of time. And here are those 11 operations that have been completed. The yellow line says you're currently in R welding and are sitting there so you can see where you are. If I now go to job costing, which is a drill here, I'm going to see by operation where I am, and I'm going to see, oh yeah, I'm at 18,000 compared to 15,000. Meanwhile, these last 2 operations don't have any hours yet, so it's only going to get worse, and I can look at the total hours, and labor and overhead is well, it's all in labor and overhead. It's significantly higher. Maybe I get interested in this operation 40, where we expected to spend 34 hours, but we ended up spending 58 hours, which resulted in an overage of, I mean, pretty much the whole thing, $3,000 of overage in terms of labor and overhead. And then I can click on that, and we saw this. I can see the details of who logged in when, how much time was accumulated by which employee. Maybe go talk to these people and say, hey, why did this take so much longer? Because we haven't even shipped this yet, and we're having some trouble from a cost perspective. I'm going to just show you one other thing because we're running out of time quickly. What if you're more of most of your jobs are stock jobs. They're not associated with a sales order. They all complete the stock. Here, I want to show you job cost details, where I'm going to look for an assembly, and there isn't a lot of these, but in this database, but I'm going to go look for something that we built to stock. And I'm going to say, hey, show me the last 5 historical jobs where I built this. And it says, well, first of all, I found 3 different part numbers that have that in it. I say, no, I want Rev C, the actual one that we built. And now here I'm going to get a BOM and a route analysis. The BOM is pretty simple. It shows you what is the standard BOM, and forgive the example here. You could have a very long BOM with all kinds of part numbers. You'd see what the standard BOM currently says. And then over the last 5 jobs, what was required and what was issued, and if there was any. So this one, this job over here that was completed last year, we didn't even issue this part. So that would be interesting to potentially look at. And then you see the average of the last 5 jobs. And then you can jump to the route and say, well, how have I done against a route? So I'll look at the work centers here, the standard route, and then you're going to see the actuals for the last 5 jobs. And anytime you have overages in terms of the actual time spent versus the estimate, you'd be able to see it. So overall, we are coming in favorable to the estimate. A lot of it is in this work center over here, where we've slowly brought down the estimates. Wow, here we went really low. But the average is 18.65, and we're in the last 5 jobs, we've been hitting 13.49. Okay, so thank you for bearing with me. We're at the top of the hour. If whoever is willing to stick around longer, Jessica, I'll be happy to field a few questions if there are any. If not, hopefully you found this interesting and intriguing enough, and the only threshold you got to cross is, should we schedule a fuller demo with Portus to find out more so it's more interactive? Because with the webinar, I just keep going. there may be things that I confused you about, or you have more questions up and I never got to them. So yes, Jessica, any
So I
questions?
I do. So does the system allow us to see standard cost reversal on credit memos?
Standard cost reversals on credit memos. I don't fully understand that question 100%, but I will say that in analysis that we do in terms of margins, where we look at invoices that were generated, we will also show credits in terms of credit memo invoices. And then we actually have a fork in our code where some customers have asked us to back out the cost for credit memos. Let me see if there's any credit memos in here. Yeah, there's some credit memos. And so here we may see some negative. Yeah, see, you will get some credited costs for those. So I don't know if I answered it. I will say I would love to talk to you about this more in a demo, but yes, we do capture credit memos and we will show you the cost. We have had customers who have said specifically for this report, I don't want to see cost for the credit memos, just show the contra revenue impact, but leave the cost alone. So we can do either based on your preference as it relates to costs on credits.
Okay. And then they would also like to know, does Portus work on the IFS ERP system?
IFS ERP system?
Yes.
Uh, I no, I have never heard of IFS before. Um, we work with Made to Manage and Oracle and NetSuite and Expandable. Those are our 4 ERP systems with a heavy focus on Made to Manage and Oracle.
Okay. It looks like we don't have any more questions after that. So I want to say thank you, Bill, for session number 2, and we look forward to session number 3 next week.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yep. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.